I really don't think that there is anybody in the world who would say that they love taking tests. And if they do, they might need some serious help, because everybody hates taking tests. They fill you with anxiety. They have tricky questions on them. Some of them, you look at the test questions and you're not even sure where the heck the material even came from. My PowerPoint is not working. Please hold for technical difficulties. But either way, test taking usually is a terrible thing that gives you poo pains and the sweats and things like that. So I just want to take you through some tips and suggestions to help you when you're taking tests. Some of them are going to seem a little basic, but you'd be surprised how often people miss them. So the first one is put your name on it. So many times I will have a student turn their test in and it doesn't have their name on it. So if I don't know who it belongs to, I can't give you a grade. It's not my job to figure that out. It sounds a little bit corny, but when you're going into a test, you really need to be proud of the stuff that you do know and focus on that as opposed to focusing on the stuff that you don't know. It's just a fact that you're not going to know everything. That, I think, is nearly impossible. There's going to be one fact, one example, one story from the book or from lecture that you're going to forget, and that's okay. That's why we make these tests a little bit longer sometimes. So this is a concept called a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you tell yourself that you're going to do well, then you will do well. If you tell yourself, oh my God, this is horrible, I'm going to suck, I'm going to fail, then chances are you're going to suck and you're going to fail. It's an actual theory. Now, most students, when they get the test, they put their name at the top, hopefully, and they just start plowing through the test with whatever section comes first. But if you're better at essays and they're at the end of the test, start there. You always want to start with the part of the test that you're best at, because what that is going to do is that's going to build your confidence. So if you're really good at matching, or if you're really good at multiple choice, when you start with that section, the more questions that you know you're getting right, the more you're building your confidence. Then you can go back to other sections of the test that maybe you're not as strong at. Please, please, please read the directions on every test in every section every time. So if you look at the two samples that I have, these are right off my own personal tests. And in the top example, I give you an opportunity for bonus points. In the second one, I tell you what the answers to all the multiple choice questions are going to be. Most people don't read the directions because they think they are the same through every single test. And they will either miss bonus points or they won't get 100 on the test because they didn't read the instructions. So in the second set, I've given this test before where every single multiple choice question will be letter D. If someone doesn't read the directions, they can still take the test, but it's a lot easier to read the directions and trust the directions. A lot of the times, you can use the test to take the test. So a lot of the times, especially with essays, though it does happen with multiple choice and true and false questions, you can find the answer somewhere else in the test. I had a multiple choice question that listed the causes of stress and burnout in caregivers. And there are 5 things listed. One of them does not cause stress. And the correct answer is B. The essay that followed was list 5 of the 7 causes of lay caregiver stress. So if you got the multiple choice question right, you now have at least 4 of the 5 answers that you can list. A second essay had discussed the events around the Tuskegee syphilis study. I asked for the purpose of the study, how many people are in the study, the dates it started, how the public reacted, what was created in the government as a result of the study, and how much money the people won. These are the other questions that were on the test. If you look through these, all of the answers, except for how much money they were given and public reaction, all of the important answers are somewhere else in the test. So another thing to do when you're taking a test, especially if it's a difficult one, is you want to mark any of the words that might be trick words. So a lot of the times we have a tendency to read the first part of the question, think we know what it's asking, we put the answer down, then we get the test back, we got it wrong, and we kick ourselves in the butt. Because if we had only read the end of the question, we would have realized they were looking for the thing that didn't fit as opposed to the things that did fit. So your trick words are going to include except, all but, or not quite often. So sometimes what you can do is reword the question. So the Tuskegee syphilis study created all of the following except. So this study that I talk about created everything in those 6 multiple choice options except for one thing, and you have to find the thing that does not belong. So if you don't read the entire question, and if you don't read all of the answers, that's called reading with expectations. That's where we have a tendency to read too quickly or not read completely, and then we make those kick ourselves in the butt mistakes. Anybody find the problem yet? This is an example of reading with expectations. Most of you might be staring at the numbers looking to see what's wrong. As far as the sentence goes, you might have stopped reading at the word find because your brain assumed that the rest of the sentence was going to say find the mistake or find what's wrong. But if you look at the word mistake, that's where the mistake is because there's no T in the word mistake. So I guess it's misaki at the moment. But that's an example of reading with expectation. Your brain fills in what it's expecting to see rather than what's actually there. And it happens all the time on tests. Some other things that you can do when you're taking tests are skip the ones that you don't know, but if you skip the ones, put a really big mark for yourself in the margin of the test where nothing else is written. So often students will circle the number of the question, but if you circle the number of the question and you have a bunch of other circles on the test, then that circle is not going to stand out. But if you put a big star or an arrow or something like that in the margin where nothing else is written, that's going to draw your attention back to it when you go over the test before you turn it in. A huge thing for people is don't change your answers. Trust your gut. If a question seems too easy, it's not because it's a trick. It's because you are that smart and you know the answer. So go with your first instinct because there are so many times where I can see the erased answer and the erased answer was the correct one. Feel free to take notes on the test. Sometimes you need to write down things that you remember or figures or drawings or whatever, and they can help you answer the question. That's okay to do. If some teachers don't like that, what you can do is you can ask for a piece of scrap paper after the test has been handed out, or you can ask if you can get a piece of paper, and you can take those notes on the scrap paper rather than on the test. So this way, anything that might be in your head, you can get it out and you can focus better. If teachers allow you to ask questions during a test, And usually when you ask questions, you have to do it individually so that you don't distract other people taking the test. But if there's a word that's used and you don't know what the word means, you can ask for clarification. Sometimes the teacher can't help you because if they tell you what that word means, it's going to give away the answer. But ask. The worst thing that can happen is that the teacher says no. Another tip is that just because people start turning in tests, don't let that freak you out. I had one student that no matter what test I gave her, within 10 minutes she would turn it in, and I could see the look on everybody else's face of just pure paranoia. What the other students didn't realize was that half of her test was blank, and she didn't answer half of the test. So the thing is that just because someone hands the test in first doesn't mean they're the smartest and that they did it better and something is wrong with you. Take the time that you need to take to really do the best for yourself. If people start finishing, then good for them. But you do what you need to do to get through the test. It's not a race. Like I said about asking questions on the previous slide, there are some things that we can help you with, and there are some things that we can't. There are some teachers who you will encounter who won't allow you to ask questions during a test, but you'll have to feel that out as you get there. But sometimes we can give you encouragement. Sometimes we could reword the question for you. So, like I said, at least ask. If the teacher says no, then you know what you're working with. But sometimes we can help and surprise you. So, a lot of students always wonder why we ask certain questions that we ask. Why do we give true and false? Why do we have to give essays? Why do we give fill in the blank and we don't give you a word bank? Well, to let you in on a little teaching secret, there was this dude called Bloom, and he created this pyramid almost of learning. So if we ask you questions down in the blue section, so if we ask you something and all you had to do was remember the information, then you're really not learning it. So the higher up on this pyramid that we go, so if we ask you questions to apply what you know, to evaluate something, if we ask you to create something based on a lecture that we did or something like that, the higher up on this kind of pyramid that we go, the questions might be harder, but it also means that you actually really know the material and you've learned the material. Our job as teachers is to not make sure you can memorize information, but to make sure that you can apply it in any way, shape, or form. So often I have students who complain and say, but that's not the way it was worded in the book. The teacher changed the wording. They tricked me. Yeah, we did. We didn't trick you, but we changed the wording on purpose. Because if all we do is check and see that you can remember stuff, then you're not going to pass your licensing boards, or you're not going to be able to apply that information in the real world when you actually need it with a patient. So that's why we use a variety of test questions so that we can tap into these different levels. So this is just another way of looking at this. So if you look at the one down in the bottom right corner, that cone of learning, if all I do is have you read a chapter and then don't do anything with it, after 2 weeks, you're going to remember about 10% of it. If I have you do something with it, if I have you create your own study guides, if I have you create your own in-class review session, now I'm down in the red part, and you're going to remember about 70% of what happened 2 weeks later. So this cone of learning is kind of done in the opposite direction as the Bloom's taxonomy. But if we just show you things, if we just say things to you, you're not going to remember them as much as if we make you apply them, which is why we have you do a lot of projects, we have you do some case studies, we have you create treatment plans, we have you answer extensive essays, we make you do papers, we have you do presentations. It's all because of this stuff. So it's not just because we want to be mean and torture you. Though I know sometimes it feels that way. So take a second and giggle, hopefully, at the cartoon that's on the right-hand side, because you know you have all done this at some point, where you color in all the little letters of a handout because you're just that bored. This goes with that Bloom's taxonomy and that cone of learning that I was telling you about, and I basically talked about this stuff. But there's a concept called rote learning, which is down at the bottom of the slide. Rote learning, we are all familiar with, even if we've never heard this term before, and it means that you learn the material just for that test, and then after the test is over, the material is gone. It is no longer in your brain. So when I took high school economics, that's all I did was rote learning just to survive and get through it. And sometimes that's what we do. But by using different questions as teachers, especially because you are in a hands-on program and in a program that's going to transition you into a job much faster, we're going to do things to try and avoid that rote learning as much as we possibly can. So, as far as the questions go, for true and false, read them closely because there's always going to be one or two words in there that are going to trick you on purpose. And don't leave them blank. You got a 50-50 shot, but make sure that your letter is clear, because if a teacher can't read what you're writing, then we're going to mark it wrong. And that's true for multiple choice, for matching. If we can't read the letter, then it's marked wrong. We're not going to guess what you were trying to guess. For matching, cross off the words that you've already used. Make sure you answer them, and think of concepts or examples that were discussed in class to help you out. And something that commonly happens is, believe it or not, students will actually repeat or make up letters that aren't part of the options. So I've had students who write letter B as an answer twice, or the options go up to G, and for some reason in the answer list there's an M. And usually that has to go with nerves, or you're thinking of something else, or maybe you're thinking of an example, or you're thinking of a word, and that's the letter that's sticking in your head. So just be careful of that stuff. As far as multiple choice goes, there are different ways to take care of this. Sometimes you can eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Process of elimination, it really is a good thing to use. As far as I haven't used B for a while, so I'll choose that. Some students get freaked out if, well, gee, the teacher used a whole lot of C's in a row, so it must not be C. To be honest with you, most times we do not plan it that way. It just happens as we're writing the test. But with multiple choice, the first thing you want to do is figure out what the question is asking. And sometimes that might mean that you have to reword the question on the test for yourself. Once you figure out what you're trying to find out, you can use process of elimination, or you can even just cover up the options themselves. If you read the question and you can create the answer by yourself, and then the answer shows up in those options, then that's probably going to be your answer because you know the information. With multiple choice, especially when there's 4 options, I'll give you a little teaching secret. But when we write these test questions, we write them purposely so that you can easily eliminate 2 of them, and then you're always stuck with the last 2. And one of them is right, but one of them is closer to being right. And we do it on purpose. Once again, because of that Bloom's taxonomy, we really want to see how much you can apply the concept. Another reason that we do it is because a lot of your board exams, all of the possible answers will be correct, but you have to pick the ones that is most correct, which is as painful as it sounds. So different teachers, we're going to start using different question styles to start getting you ready for that and work up your test-taking endurance, I guess you could call it. If you have to label things, don't always expect a word bank. If you do get a word bank, be grateful and cross off the options that you've already used. If there is no word bank, make your own on the test or on your scrap paper. And with labeling, start with what you know. If you have to label the heart or the skeletal system, or if you're labeling muscles or nerves or lobes of the brain, no matter what you're labeling, you do not get to complain if the picture looks different. So if you studied the picture in the book and then you get the test and the picture looks just a little bit different or it looks way different, you don't get to complain. We are doing it on purpose, once again, to make sure that you haven't just memorized the information, but that you can apply it no matter which way you see it. So if you have to, if in your textbook the layers of the skin are in one viewpoint and then on the test you get a completely rotated view, that should not throw you off. Because if you did more than just memorize where the words went and did more than memorize the picture, you'll be just fine. Read the comic. Take a giggle. As far as essays go, at least try them. The worst thing you could do is leave a question blank. Give it a shot. So if you get it wrong, at least you tried. But if you don't try and then you could have gotten it right, now you lost points for nothing. So with essays, usually essays will have multiple parts to it. And again, we do this on purpose to make sure that you are reading the instructions. So with essays, read the question, answer the question, and then reread the question to make sure that you got all of the parts. Feel free to label the parts of the question in the question itself and in your response, and do exactly what the essay tells you to do. So if the essay tells you to list, then just list. If it says describe, you need to describe. If it says most commonly is the list and explain, which means you have to list the stuff and then talk about it a little bit. And you might die a little inside when you see the word explain. But we've all been there before, because to be teachers, we've all had to be students. To be nurses and hygienists, we've all had to be students. So we've survived the same things that we're giving you. This is just a scary picture of, it looks scary to you, but for us teachers, it's kind of nice. But that Bloom's taxonomy that I was telling you about, that pyramid to make sure that you're really understanding what you're doing, this is another way of looking at it. So for you guys, if you look down just at the questions row, which is at the very bottom, the ones under knowledge, can you list? How would you describe? When did such and such happen? Those are questions that are just going to see if you remember the facts. But then, if we move all the way to the blue end, that's where it's going to start to get harder, and we want you to actually apply what you're learning and evaluate it in a different way. So sometimes those questions seem a little opinionated. Do you agree with? Why would you agree with it based on the readings or based on lecture from class? So this is just, I just wanted to show you this so you can see how there are some key words that trigger whether we're asking you to just regurgitate what you've memorized or if we're really asking you to do some higher level thinking. That higher level thinking is going to stay with you longer, and it's going to work better for you later in the program when you need to recall that information again. So this is just another way to look at the same thing that just doesn't look as scary. And this cartoon's right. You can't just know something. You can't just memorize something. You have to be able to know how to use it and how to apply it, how to help other people apply it. So if you memorize a list of NSAIDs, that's great and fantastic. But if you don't know how to use that list, then you can't help your patient who either needs to be on one or is having an interaction because of one, or if you need to teach your patient what an NSAID is. And this is, again, another way to look at the same thing. So what I was telling you about with Bloom, it's not fake. It's not just garbage. It's real. And these things that are out there, there are actually now apps for iPads and for Androids and things like that that can have you see if you can just remember stuff. So many people are really excited by Quizlet, which is an app that has online flashcards. That's going to fall under your green section. So that's going to fall under the did I just remember it? But then there are other things that you can do. So in the purple section, you can actually create different projects or anatomical figures. There are also, in the red section, there are apps where you can have, an anatomical figure and you have to label it and it shows you the figure in different forms. So you can actually use your digital devices yourself to help assess your different areas of how well you know the information. I figure before I talk, I'll just let you read the cartoons and laugh at them. I feel so bad every time one of my students makes that monkey face. You gotta study for tests. Sorry, there's no way around it, especially in college. And during the test, you have to stay focused. You can't let your head drift to the grocery list or that you're hungry, or you can't be yelling at yourself in your head that you didn't do enough. You just have to take it for what it's worth and get better for next time. You have to at least try. Answer everything. It's better to answer everything than to leave stuff blank. To avoid the monkey face, make sure that you look at all of the pages that are on the test, because sometimes there is a backside and we don't have to draw a huge arrow saying, turn this page over. But have confidence in yourself. If you were in class, if you studied, if you did the best that you could possibly do at that moment in time, then that's all any of us can ask for. If you don't score as well as you would like to, then what we need to do is look at what you did, how you prepared, and see if there are different ways that we can tweak that just a little bit to see if we can get a different result next time. That's it. So just because you try it a certain way once, if it's not working, it doesn't mean you're doing it the wrong way. We just might have another technique that might work better just for you particularly. So, here's the kick yourself in the butt part I was talking about. When we look at a test and we know there's a time limit and we see other people turning it in, it makes us panic, and the test can look like it's written in a completely different language. But then as soon as we get the test back, it's clear as crystal. So what I suggest when you get a test back, you're not going to be allowed to keep your tests. So you want to have a notebook ready so you can jot down some of the concepts that you got incorrect. You cannot just write number 2 was D, because that's not going to help you later on. But if you take notes on the concepts that you got wrong, now you know what you need to study for the next test, especially if your tests are cumulative, which means that they build on each other. But anytime you get a test back, ask yourself, did I have more kick myself in the butt questions? Or did I have more, where the heck did that material come from? Because honestly, it's better to have kick yourself in the butt mistakes, because that means you knew the material, you just took the test the wrong way. So that might mean that you read for expectations, that you read too quickly, that you tried to go too fast, that your anxiety was too high, but you knew the information. So those mistakes are ones that we can definitely fix. If you're having the where the heck did that come from, then to fix that, we need to fix how you're taking notes, how you're studying, how you might be reading your textbook, and things like that. Your job is to work to get better, not to be perfect, because you're not going to be perfect. If you expect yourself to be perfect, you are setting yourself up for something that might be unattainable, and you're setting yourself up possibly to be disappointed. We want you to do your best. If your best is hundreds all the time, then more power to you. But if your best is 70, then that's fine too. That's what we are looking for you to try. That's it. And get better. So I think we're almost done. This should be the last slide. So please remember, it's our job as teachers to use different styled questions to get you ready for other classes, for other teachers, for board tests, for other types of exams that you're going to take, and for when you actually have to apply this to the real world. You don't get to get test reviews, and you don't get to whine and complain when the picture looks different, or you don't get a test, or you don't get a word bank for matching, or if you don't get a word bank for fill in the blank, rather. You guys are adults. In 5th grade, yeah, you get a word bank. You're not in 5th grade anymore. So you don't get to whine and complain. Be adults. Don't act like kids. When we write these tests, we're not out to trick you. We are not out to get you. We are out to prepare you so that you can graduate. If you're struggling, come talk to us. You have every right to review your tests. All you have to do is set up a meeting with us, and then you can come in and we can go through the things that you got wrong and see if there's a theme. And if there's a theme to the things that you're getting wrong, then we can help adjust a study technique or something like that. So again, we're here to help, not trick you. So good luck. Do the best that you can and try. That's all we're looking for. We're looking for effort, not perfect.